Hey, Choose Life Nation. This is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, and you are watching or listening to another episode of the Rebound Coach Live. I am your host and speaker for the evening. I'm Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach from the reboundcoach.com. And you might be wondering, what exactly is a Rebound Coach? Why are we here? How did this show up on my feed? What are you doing? Happy to share how we got this moment together today. If this is your first time sharing virtual space with me, I want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up here. There's a whole lot of places to spend your time on the interwebs and a lot of people vying for your time and attention. So I take it as a great honor that you would spend some of your virtual space here with me. If you have ever dealt with the prison of perfectionism, tonight is for you. So I'm pretty excited to share tonight with you how to escape the prisons of perfectionism. I promise you, I think maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times today that's come across in my consciousness. And so I'm going to share that with you tonight. And it's pretty common. It happens to a lot of us. Now, before I get into today's topic, I just want to share a little bit about how we got to this moment together. Here's the headline, guys. I was married 10 years to a man who wanted me dead. And that does make a whole lot of sense for someone who grew up in perfectionism's grooming. It was I had 2 parents. They loved God. They loved each other. They were married for a lifetime. I grew up in a strong faith-based home. I had lots of things set up for my benefit, right? My parents were a great example of marriage and family. And they, all of that seemed well. At the same time, I was molested from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. And that radically affects, number one, how you see yourself. Those are identity forming years, how you relate to God in a household of faith, and how you relate to men. And so fast forward, I met the man that I married and eventually divorced. And there were definitely red flags. There were definitely reasons not to be together. As a praying woman, I believed God's answer was yes. And because of that, I believed that whatever came, we'd outlast it, we'd overcome it. God would swoop in and save the day and change things. And all I had to do was stick it out. And so that was my full intention throughout the entire marriage. And I wish I could tell you that there was some sort of honeymoon phase and things were great until they weren't. But that's not what happened. Trouble came right away and never quite left. We got into a cycle of what I call coping and crisis. So this is where you're never quite happy. You never get dissatisfied. It's not even pleasant, but you've learned how to do this coping dance. You're walking on eggshells. You're trying not to upset him. You seem to always upset him. And things are kind of in this mess, and you're very careful about keeping the house of cards together so no one sees how bad it is. And so you don't even see how bad it is. You've done a very good job of convincing yourself that it's not that bad. It's certainly not abuse. It's just a difficult marriage. And then there's some sort of crisis that just blows the whole thing. So how, as careful as the house of cards as you built, it's like something just comes and just blows it all up. And then you have to very carefully reconstruct. And so for us, that crisis was often a mental health crisis on his part that just blew the whole family up. And I had to very carefully reconstruct our coping dance. We did that for the larger part of 10 years, definitely over 9 years. And everything came to a head end of 2019, beginning of 2020. He had finally left for another woman. And I say finally, because he was a serial adulterer and had many affairs over the span of the marriage. But this time in particular, he left. And I found out the next day, he and that woman he had been cheating with were plotting my murder and had been doing so for months by the time I found out about it. So needless to say, that's the kind of record scratch moment in the movie. Unfortunately, it's not a movie, but if it were, that's the record scratch moment where everything just kind of comes to a halt and you have really important decisions to make. The I think the biggest the biggest thought in my mind was like, how did this become my life? How did I end up here? Why? Which is a variation of why did this happen to me? Hey, Cheryl, good to see you. Which is a variation of why did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? But why is this my life? Right? And of course, you have really important decisions to make in that time. And what I boil it down to is I could allow the identity that my ex-husband had planned for me and the identity I had taken on. Okay. And I'm not blaming him for that because I took it on. So it could tell me how long I had to live, right? He had a death date, a literal death date planned for me. How I was allowed to express myself as a woman, as a wife, as a mom, as a child of God, what my faith practice is supposed to look like. I could allow him to prescribe all that, or I could choose life. Yay! So, through a divine series of events, I am alive. I am alive, and I'm so thankful. And my children are safe, and they are with me, and we are learning, unlearning, relearning, growing, healing, and living together. And so, I wrote a book out of all of that. This is the name of the book, I Choose Life. Rewrite your love story and change your legacy. And this is not just for anyone whose story resonates with mine. If you've experienced abuse in any of its forms, that is childhood sexual abuse, domestic violence, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, anything, this is for you. Okay. But it is my story, but it's not only my story. It is a life map. It's a roadmap for those who've experienced abuse and for those who love people who've experienced abuse. So if you fall in either one of those categories, you can find this book at thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. You can get one of these physical hard copies right here, and I will personally sign it and write you a love note and mail it out to you. Or you can get one from Amazon. They will send you one without a signature and a love note, but you can get one from there, or you can get an ebook copy from Amazon as well. All of that information is at thereboundcoach.com/book. Okay, so y'all, how to escape perfectionism's prison. So first of all, perfectionism plagues a whole lot of people, and it's something in our society that we admire, right? We look up to, and we use that as a code for like, I do excellent work, or I work very hard, right? My standard is high. Okay, so we use we use perfectionism as a word to try and say those things, but honestly, it doesn't say those things. It says other things. So how do you know? It says other things. It says other things like you're afraid, like you're a self-saboteur, like you are a procrastinator, that you're more interested in someone else's opinion of you and your work than your actual work, right? So it says lots of things that we don't want it to say. We want it to say something good about us. Instead, it says something bad about us. But check it out. So how do we know that we're perfectionists? And I say we because I am also a recovering perfectionist myself. So how do we know? These are not all the signs. These are a few signs, right? Analysis paralysis. It's where you think, to contemplate, to consider, to wonder again and again if you're making the right decision. And also, I'll say procrastination for sure, but also like decision procrastination. I fall into that myself quite often, where I don't want to decide one way or the other because I feel like I could decide wrong and I could mess it up. And I'd rather not make a decision than to make the wrong decision, which is a problem for a lot of reasons. But what I can also say is not making a decision is a decision, right? It's a decision not to progress. It's a decision not to be productive. It's a decision not to move forward in the goals that I have set or that you have set, right? So procrastination on decision making is a decision, a fearful one, a fear driven one. All right. So we talked about procrastination, um, especially when challenged, when there's like too many things to consider. So I think there's a difference between I want to make an excellent decision, so I'm going to do due diligence, versus I want to make the perfect right decision because I can't live with any other outcome. And so there's too many things to consider. I'm just going to not do anything. I'm just going to shut it down. Right. So procrastination when challenged, being deeply insulted when criticized. And some criticism is, hurtful, negative criticism, and some criticism is what they call constructive, where, it's trying to help you improve in a certain process or a certain product. But either way, if you feel incredibly attacked, I'm raising my hand because I've definitely been there. When you work hard on something and you're trying to make something perfect, right? And then people, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Could you add this? And what about, I'm like, I've worked so hard. This is perfect. How dare you? which is a different response, right? A certain personality's response to criticism. How dare you insult my wonderful work? Right? Um, and it's you're denying your humanity. Like, okay, you're not going to get it right all the time. It's not going to be perfect. And guess what? Even you could use some improvement in certain areas, and it's okay. But it was like, no, my work is perfect. Like, how dare you criticize my wonderful thing? Right? So being deeply insulted when criticized can be a sign of perfectionism and just ego all the way around, guys. Just ego. All right. An all or nothing kind of attitude, right? So perfectionism says it's either all going to be perfect and, everything is a smashing success, or I have utterly failed, right? There's no in between. So if it doesn't come in the perfect standard, like the world is over, I'm a failure, this is awful, I have to quit now. And I will also say quitting after failure is a sign of perfectionism. Just like I can't deal, I'm just not going to do this anymore, right? That is a sign of perfectionism, where you just give up because you can't get it perfect, right? I remember when I was young, my parents gave me organ lessons, well, piano lessons, but we had an organ. So this lady, her name was Miss Williams. I remember older lady used to come to the house and teach me on an old organ that was in our home. And my parents wanted me to practice your scales and practice your stuff. And I hated it. I hated it so bad. Not because I didn't like music. I loved music. Not because I wasn't good at my instrument. I was actually okay. But I hated it because I couldn't get it perfect, right? It's a skill you're learning. You're training your fingers to move in a certain sequence and move in a certain way. And you're training your fingers. And I couldn't get it right fast enough. And I would get so upset. And I remember just screaming and banging my hands on the piano, like, "Arr!" And my parents would, and I would cry. Because I couldn't get it perfect. I couldn't get it right. And my parents would just want me to practice. They would just want me to learn and play in church. And I would cry. Oh, it was awful. And as soon as I was old enough that I didn't have to do what they were saying, I quit. I quit piano lessons, which was really sad because, I learned basics, but I never became really excellent because I wouldn't give myself the grace to learn that skill. And so today I do play piano rarely and for pleasure only, but it was something that I could have been more developed in had I given myself some grace and allowed the learning process to be what it is, right? No one fusses at a baby for stumbling when they're learning to walk. they just cruise on the furniture and they pull themselves up. And I had a baby that was extremely cautious, and she would like do the cruising thing that babies do, and then she'd stop, put her hands down and look, and I say, "Come on, baby, come on, take a step, come on, you can do it." And she'd look around, and she'd go back on the floor. like I'm not willing to try. No, eventually she did. I'm so glad, because you never get to the walking part if you don't do that risk. But being risk averse is one of the signs as well of perfectionism, because you don't want to be wrong, you don't want to lose out, you don't want to fail, and so you play not to lose instead of playing to win, right? That is being risk avoidant. Okay, so all or nothing, we talked about that. Being critical of yourself and others. And so something this reminded me of course, we are our own worst critics. And I had a friend many years ago that when I was getting to know her, I could say she still is a fitness junkie, but at that time she was a personal trainer, and fitness was, a really big part of her life. And I have always been obese, like always since childhood. And so um, we were odd looking friends, but we were very good friends. And I remember once she was nervous to say it, but she asked me, how do you live with yourself at that size? Which is insulting, right? Like, that's an insulting thing to say to somebody. But she wasn't trying to insult me. She was genuinely asking because she couldn't imagine living with herself if she had become obese. And at the time, I said, that's not where I get my worth. I don't get my worth from there, or what I look like, or all that. And it was a great answer at the time, but I had to really say, okay, well, where do you get your worth? Right. And you can ask yourself the same question and fill in the blank. I could never live with myself if, and fill in that blank. That tells you where your worth is. That tells you what you're striving for. If it's someone else's opinion, if it's whatever it is. And I will tell you this too, ladies and gentlemen, careful how you judge. Careful, careful, careful how you judge. I have known in my own life that we become who we judge. Because when I was married, I wouldn't say them out loud, maybe not in the same direct words, but I would definitely think I couldn't live with myself if I was divorced. Well, here we are, right? So my attitude is different towards divorce today, obviously. However, you become who you judge. So in your criticism and in your desire to be better than someone else in a different station in life, careful, careful how you judge. Careful, careful who you judge. What I've learned is that we become who we judge. Okay, so anyway, criticism of self and others is definitely a sign of perfectionism. There are others, but those are the ones I'm going to highlight today. What's wrong with being a perfectionist? Right? Well, it means I'm going to work hard. It means I'm going to put a lot of effort into whatever I produce. And most of the time, my stuff is pretty flawless, or at least perceived that way, right? My stuff is good. So what's the problem with that? What's the problem with high standards of excellence? So what I will tell you, what's wrong with perfectionism, combining two words. What's wrong with perfectionism is that it's a prison, and it's extremely dangerous to your mental health. It's extremely dangerous to your mental health, especially over time. And the problem with perfectionism, it's a high functioning kind of issue, meaning that people who deal with perfectionism tend to take the stress well. We we find adaptions to deal with ourselves, to deal with other people. We self-sabotage because we can't do the risk, right? Signs of damage to our mental health from perfectionism is depression, And depression can mask a whole lot of ways. Um, when we're overly tired all the time, we're tired all the time. Even when you sleep, you're still tired. Exhaustion, overwhelm, living in a perpetual state of frustration, a perpetual state of stress, right? These are signs of workaholism, right? Where I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going. And I've lived it. I have lived it. I have lived it. I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, "Well, you're doing this event and that event. You always got to have something going on." And it's a loved one who said that to me, but I definitely felt an air of criticism in that tone. Like, you always have to have something going on. Yeah. Yeah, is the short answer. I do have to have something going on. Otherwise, I find it important to be about something and to be active and doing something of value in the world and society and making a difference. That's important to me. And so, yes is the answer, but knowing that having always something going on, that can be unhealthy if it's taken in the extreme. Okay, so everything in balance, right? So being a workaholic, there it is. Being a workaholic, dealing with depression, or avoidance of necessary risk. So we talked about being risk avoidant because there's too much to deal with. I don't want to risk failing. I don't want to risk doing something wrong. I don't want to risk having someone's poor opinion of me, right? All of that comes into play. But the problem with that is we cannot progress without a certain level of risk. And I would even say consistent risk. Sometimes you just got to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And sometimes the issues are not easily, you don't always see what the answer is right away. And you're not always able to fix something right away. Sometimes you have to stumble your way into the next level, whatever that next level is that you're going for. And if you never expose yourself to that level of risk because you're afraid to lose or afraid to fail, you never do get to that place. And it's scary and sad, because you can spend your life hoping and dreaming and wishing and praying for the next level, or even, dare I say, the things that God has promised you, because it requires your participation, and you limit your participation because you're afraid, right? So that fear of failure, that shame, that guilt, that self-sabotage, it just keeps you in that place of, I want that, but not as bad as, not enough to risk. And it keeps us stuck and it keeps us in prison. So tonight we're talking about how to escape perfectionism's prison. All right. So let's share some solutions, shall we? And again, these are not all encompassing. These are not all of the things you can do. These are a few thoughts that you can start with in your escape of perfectionism's prison. Okay, so number one, allow your best to be enough. I have affirmations that I listen to frequently, and part of that is I will allow my best to be enough. Now, you only you know what your best is. And we also know when we are sloughing off, we're not doing our job, or we're avoiding things, or we're scrolling or eating or playing or doing something, avoiding our work because of whatever reason, right? We know when we're not doing our best. But when we are doing our best, it is important to allow your best to be enough, not the outcome of perfection, not even the outcome of approval from someone else. Right. So it's not, well, getting it right is the only right answer, or getting it right is the only thing that's going to be good enough. Doing it perfectly is the only thing that's going to be good enough. No, me doing my best is good enough. That's what's good enough. Now, if I did my best and succeeded, fantastic, terrific, hooray. If I did my best and did not succeed, also fantastic, Terrific. Hooray. Also, because the doing my best and stretching, because growing is part of my best, that's the win, not the outcome, not being married to the outcome. And I say that it is still as applicable then as it is now, to allow my best to be enough. I know that if I have done everything I know how to do, if I've learned a couple new things and tried those too, if I've done all the things and it still doesn't work out the way I was hoping, you know what? My best is enough, and it's okay. My best is enough, and it's okay. It's okay. So allow your best to be enough. Forgive yourself for when you're not, even when you haven't done your best. So if you're struggling with overwhelm and frustration and depression and you're feeling stuck, and depression does things like avoid, right? Hide, not try very hard. And if you know, like, man, I have not done my best, you can still forgive yourself and start again. And you should forgive yourself and start again, and give yourself the opportunity to grow. Because when we don't forgive ourselves, I'm mad at you, you didn't do your best. That makes things worse. The self-criticism voice, you give your criticism permission to continue to rant and rave and pull you down and tell you you're horrible, you're a horrible person. I learn a lot watching my kids. And I have a daughter. I have at least one that deals with her perfectionism similar to myself. And so I get a lot of insight watching her. And if there's a spill or she breaks something or something doesn't go to plan, sometimes she'll just go and sulk. Just pull away. I just want to be alone. But I'm looking at her and I can almost hear the voice in her head beating herself up. And I said to her once, are you beating yourself up right now? And she just looks and mm-hmm. And I said, that will not help us. That won't help. That won't make the mistake change. Like, we can't go back in the past and change what happened. It won't help you get better at anything. It just makes you feel bad, and it makes me feel bad, and then everyone's feeling bad. Like, stop. And she's like, okay. Mistakes happen. Even mistakes happen that mommy gets upset about, right? So in that example, even if somebody disapproves of your mistake and it was a mistake, right? You did mess something up. That is not tied to your worth. And that's easier said than done, but it is important to be mindful in those moments and say, you know what? I messed this up because I didn't do my best. I didn't plan well. I heard someone else made a mistake that could be criticized by the people who saw the mistake, right? And she just said, I didn't plan well, and I'm missed this detail, and I didn't show up when I was expected to show up, and things weren't good because of my mistake, and I just didn't plan well. And I thought that was so brave of her to just say it. And it wasn't she didn't say it in a condescending way or self-condemning way. It was just like, I just didn't plan well, and that didn't work. It's like, wow. Like, that impressed me. That impressed me because she was honest without beating herself up. And what a way to be. What a way to be. And just be like, you know what? I was wrong. That was wrong. I could have done better, and I'm going to do better. And that's it. No big, long identity crisis attached. No big, long self-beating session attached. Just, yeah, I shouldn't have done that one. Now I'm going to make a different decision, right? So forgiving yourself is really important. Number 2, getting out of your head. So that really is similar to what I just said, but not getting out of your head about what you did wrong and what you could have done better, and how so-and-so didn't like what you did, and how the world is ending because you didn't do it just perfect. Should the Lord grace you to do a thing, and even if the thing does not go the way you're intending, or that you were hoping, or that you were working toward, if you're still alive, You still have opportunity to do better, to change course, to learn something new. You still have that opportunity, and you can make the best of whatever the situation is that you are dealing with and walking through. That is the growth, that is the lesson, and that is the win, as opposed to a particular outcome of your work. So getting out of your head and literally being able to share. Sometimes we have so much going on in our minds trying to figure something out or make the best decision, or it just, the chatter can be overwhelming, and just sharing with someone can make all the difference. And it doesn't mean that person has the answer, right? That person's under no obligation to have an answer. Just to be heard is so, so, so valuable. Okay. Number 3, to be seen for who you are and who you are not. So just like I was saying about the earlier example, the woman who made a mistake and said, I just didn't plan well, and I didn't do well in that instance. I just made a mistake, and it cost other people, right? She was being vulnerable and allowing herself to be seen by me in that moment as her real self, not as the representative that shows up and says, I have everything under control. I have everything perfect. I am fully equipped and all the way together, and I have it all. Because we don't. Like, none of us do. Like, none of us do. and it's way better to be seen and loved and accepted in our humanity than something else. Okay? So all of that to say, ladies and gentlemen, that you can be set free from the prison of perfectionism. Okay, there, you can forgive yourself. You can allow yourself to grow. You can give yourself grace and compassion, and you can give yourself motivation to move forward. Something else that's beautiful that you can do on the opposite end of your self-criticism voice is a self-encouragement voice. That takes effort and intentionality, but it is healing to the soul. Say, you know what? You got this. I say to myself, just like the voice inside that would say, you're a failure, you didn't do it, how dare you, you get it wrong, you got it wrong again, and you're never going to get it right. Like, all of that. Not saying that never happens, because sometimes that happens. What I do say intentionally is, Dallas, I am so proud of you. Dallas, you're beautiful. Dallas, you got it. You got to get it. I'm so proud of you. Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can. So the voice inside says, no, I can't do it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Talking to yourself is fully allowed. You already do it. Just switch it to positive. Okay. So if you happen to be in the Tampa Bay area, I have an invitation for you. It's literally 2 days away, and it's very exciting. It's called Soul Nourish Night. I'm going to play a quick video about it, and I'll be right back. It's going to be a really good time. I literally we will have opportunity, should you join us, you will have opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to experience safe touch, to experience love, to experience the healing value, the healing virtue of silence, of peace. There's some laughter, there's some play, there's opportunity to connect. and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening. And so you can snag your ticket at thereboundcoach.com/events. That is thereboundcoach.com/events. You will see Soul Nourish Night is the first flyer there. You can click through and get your ticket. I do recommend getting that sooner than later because Friday will be upon us very shortly. And this is the first event of its kind, and I'm really excited about it. So if you're in the Tampa Bay area, join me. If you're not in the Tampa Bay area, I have an invitation for you later on in September as we get closer to September. But you can find more about that at thereboundcoach.com/events. All right. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And also, if you're joining me here on YouTube, please subscribe. Okay. Subscribe and share and click the notification bell. Okay. So you can know when we are going live. We are live most Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I greatly, greatly treasure my time with you. Please do share in the comments what about this episode ministered to you. What was something that stuck out that you would like to put into practice to escape the prison of perfectionism? Thank you so much again for joining me. Have a great, great week. And until next time, choose life.